screwing around and start!
Hey, Pointy Star the Better Man here, back with another deck profile. This time I'm doing Psy-Frames. This is one of the decks that I've built most recently. I built this back when it came out in 2016, so I say most recent, but I should say before I left the game. I like it a lot. As you guys might guess, I really like turtle playstyles of I'm going to sit on a boss monster and negate things. But without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. So to start off, we have 3 Psy-Frame Driver. This is a fairly obvious choice, considering all of your monsters don't work without having a driver somewhere. You play 3 because you have to. It is a bit of a dead draw, but in this deck, luckily it's less dead than anything that's just trying to tech them. You play 1 Multi-Threader. Multi-Threader is an additional name of driver, but only if it's in the hand or field. It's also a lot less dead, because you can discard it to prevent destruction. It's a decent one of. I found that playing multiples kind of bricks, but it has some utility. Then on to the actual negates. We play 3 Psy-Framegear Alpha. This is the only one that doesn't negate, but instead it searches. So when a monster would be summoned, normal or special, you get to search a Psy-Frame card, summon a driver, and then if you've got the field, and level 1 tuner. So the gimmick of this deck is all of your non-gears are level 6, allowing you to go into level 6s and level 7s. All of the gears are tuners, drivers are your non-tuners. Then you play 2 Psy-Framegear Beta. Beta says if a monster declares an attack while you control no monsters, or if the only monster you control is a card we'll get to later. You can negate the attack and the battle phase and summon a driver. You have to be able to summon a driver to resolve any of these effects. That is important to note, but negates an attack and the battle phase. 3 Psy-Frame Gamma. Gamma is probably the one everybody recognizes the most because it negates monster effects on summon. Very good. 3 Delta. Delta negates spells. So when a spell card will be activated, negate and destroy. And then 1 Epsilon. Epsilon in the main is one of the bigger changes to this deck, but given the frequency of evenly matched against going first deck, since you want to be going first with Psy-Frame so you can set up your back row, Epsilon is just great protection against evenly matched, or if you've got an established board and they try and imperm, say, your Lambda, you can get Epsilon there. I might want to bump this up to 2, but in the current game, not enough decks are maining that many traps, but it's definitely a card that you side the other 2 copies of and put the other 2 in a game 2 if you are facing a trap heavy deck. But since Evenly Matched came out, Epsilon has been clutch as a one of, especially because you can search it with Alpha. 3 Cardcar D. This deck does want to go first, and you do care about your extra deck, and you do care about your main deck, so you can't really play Pot of Extravagance or Desires. But since you don't care about your normal summon and Cardcar D removes itself, it's a decent draw engine. This is slow for a lot of decks, but I still really like it in Psy-Frame because, as I said, you can't get Extravagance or Desires reliably. And that's it for the monsters. I don't play any generic hand traps. That's a personal choice, but considering this deck has plenty of negates as is, I think it's good. I definitely can understand builds that would put Ash Blossom, because about the only thing this deck doesn't do is stop searching. But considering you can stop both spells and monster effects, it's not exactly like searching is going to be hard to stop. It's just not, the most direct way to stop searching. 3 Psy-Frame Circuit onto the spells. This is your field spell. This is another reason why you want to go first, because if this is on the field and you summon a Psy-Frame, you can immediately Synchro Summon. This lets you get basically any of your boss monsters, and more importantly, this helps you clear your field so that you can activate more Psy-Frame monsters. Since both Psy-Frame Lord Omega and Psy-Frame Lord Zeta can banish themselves, it's wonderful. And then you play 3 Psychic Field Zone. Psychic Field Zone is a great card and probably only seen play in this deck. So what it does is you can take 2 banished Psychic monsters, 1 tuner, 1 non-tuner, put them in the graveyard, and if you do, special summon a Psychic type Synchro monster whose level is equal. It does summon the monster in defense position, which is kind of annoying, meaning you can't attack with it the turn you use this, but considering all of your monsters banish themselves if at the end of the turn they're special summoned, it is vital to get resources back. You can also do some shenanigans with this and both of your boss monsters to prevent your opponent from getting the card you banished when you banished your Psy-Frame Lord back. So there's just plenty of ways. Just a fantastic card. I wouldn't play any less than 3. 3, Pot of Duality. As I said, you don't need the normal summon very often, and you're most often special summoning during your opponent's turn, so Duality is a great way to dig for specific answers. It can find your field spell, it can find your floodgates, it can find a specific gear that you don't have in hand. Good card. 1, Burial from a Different Dimension. I like Burial in this deck for a couple of reasons. It lets you get back drivers if you've run into the situation where you've banished all 3 of your drivers. It also helps you recycle some of the extra synchros and just clear your banish pile a little bit in case your opponent does do something weird, or like it helps against DD Crow. So say your opponent, say all your drivers are in the graveyard and your opponent has a DD Crow. This being a quick play means if they DD Crow, you can put it back in the graveyard pretty fast. Or if you've only got 1 but your other 2 are banished and they DD Crow 1, you can put the other 2 back. So I think it's really good right now. It's a bit format dependent, but I really like it at the moment. 1, Terraforming. Terraforming searches your field spell. Your field spell is so good that you want to see it every game, so Terraforming. 1, Regeki. I'm poor, so I don't have Lightning Storm, so I play Regeki. Clearing your opponent's monsters is just generally good. Say you are going second, Regeki is a great tool to help recover since you're not going to be able to pull out a synchro during your opponent's turn when they went first. Wonderful card. 1, Dimension Fissure. You don't care about your graveyard, so most of your opponents do, so Dimension Fissure is a great way to just stun them. And then for the traps, we play 3, Psy-Frame Overload. Overload is effectively a way to use dead draws and banish them. So you can banish a Psy-Frame monster to ban from your field or hand to target a card on the field and banish it face down. This is wonderful. A lot of cards can say they're prevented from destruction. Banishing face down is not destruction. Banishing face down makes it really hard for them to interact with as well. So this is just a great card. Again, if you're out of drivers, Overload is a phenomenal way to still have some sort of a game plan. Also, when it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to search a Psy-Frame card except itself. Since it's a trap card, this is an either player's turn effect, and it explicitly says that because it's old enough. But that's just great. And there's a loop you can do with Omega. Since during your opponent's standby phase, Omega can put any banished card back in your graveyard. You can banish this, return it, and then banish it again to just kind of keep searching with it. 3, Torrential Tribute. Again, you're you're going to want to have no monsters. So say you have a negate but no field spell, well, you wipe your board. That puts Driver in the graveyard, preventing it from being banished, and can wipe your opponent's board, and it sets you back to 0 monsters. So, wonderful card. Then I play 2, Drowning Mirror Force. Again, since you're often going to be at a point where you have no monsters on the board, or that's an ideal state, maybe they'll just try and go straight to battle phase. I only play 2 Beta because I think Drowning Mirror Force can be equally effective. So this just spins everything back to the deck, or at least all attack position monsters. This is a really good card. I think this is also only a going first card, so if you are going second, I highly recommend, if you can, siding this out for Evenly Matched, Infinite Impermanence, Ash Blossom, something. So this is a very good card to side, but going first, or even if you're facing a deck that you know has no back row removal, say game 3, just another wonderful card to have. And then the last card in our deck, Macrocosmos. As I said, we don't care about the banished pile, or the graveyard or the banished pile, but most often your opponent does. So this is super good. Like if you can open this or Dimensional Fissure, a lot of decks, if they can't immediately out that, kind of just scoop. That's how good they are, and that's why they're stuck at 1. But that's it for the main deck. So, on to the extra deck. We play 2 Psy-Frame Lord Lambda. Lambda is phenomenal. It lets you take 2 monsters, any 2 monsters, and turn it into Lambda. So, if you don't want to synchro summon, this is probably your best option going first. Or anytime you resolve a Psy-Frame on your turn. While it's on the field, you can activate Psy-Framegear monsters, even if you control monsters. And if a face-up psychic type monster you control is banished, during the end phase of that turn, you can search a Psy-Frame card from your deck to your hand. That effect's only a once per turn, but again, just wonderful synergy in the deck. We picked ours up before they got expensive because I've been playing Psy-Frames for years now, but since this card is expensive, it is okay to run 1. Obviously that is a little bit less optimal in case your opponent can out it. You do want to have other options, but there are ways of, in deck, getting it from your graveyard back to your extra deck. So 2 isn't mandatory, but it's nice to have. 1 Psy-Frame Lord Omega. He is unfortunately generic, meaning he is limited. For those who don't know, he can, during the main phase of either player's turn, banish itself and 1 card from your opponent's hand. It does banish that card face up, so you do get to see what you banished. And then during your standby phase specifically, you get your card back and your opponent gets their card back. Again, this is a great way to stun opponents. If they search a specific card and they have very low cards in hand, you can just banish this to get rid of whatever they searched and kind of stun them. And then during the opponent's standby phase, you can target you can target 1 banished card, return it to the graveyard. You can return banished cards from either side of the field. So if for whatever reason your opponent has a card that's banished that they want banished, you can put it in the graveyard. That's less convenient, but as I said, it does combo wonderfully with your overload and your drivers. It's effectively just going to help give you infinite resources while you have it. And then its a final effect is if this card is in the graveyard, you can target 1 card in either graveyard and shuffle both this and that card into the deck. As I said, this deck does have ways to recycle your Lambdas. This can recycle some of your floodgates. This can put a card that your opponent is in your opponent's graveyard that you don't want in their graveyard back in their deck. It's just really, really good. If it wasn't generic, we might have more, but since you can only play 1, you only play the 1. Then we play 2 Psy-Frame Lord Zeta. Zeta is obviously less good, but he is level 7, so you can only make him with Alpha and Beta. All the level 8s you can make with Gamma, Delta, or Epsilon. Zeta can target a special summoned monster your opponent controls in attack position and banish both it and the opponent's and this card. Again, until the next standby phase. This card used to be a lot worse because it was easy to play around, but now since Link monsters are guaranteed to be in attack mode, this is a decent way to out a bunch of problematic Link cards. And since this is a quick effect during either player's turn, if your opponent makes IP Masquerena, you can banish it before the opponent can do anything. So if they just end on an IP Masquerena and you have Zeta, you can kind of just out it pretty easily. Unfortunately, it does come back during the next standby phase, so it's not always the best, but it is a quick effect, so you can chain 2 effects that aren't destroy or send as cost. And again, if this card is in the graveyard, you can target a Psy-Frame card to the graveyard, putting that to the extra deck and adding the Psy-Frame card you targeted to your hand. So again, another way to recycle Lambda. You only play 2 because you, again, can recycle it easily, and you're never going to need to have 3 on the field. 1 Overmind Archfiend. Overmind Archfiend is an interesting card, 3300 attack, level 11, and can target a psychic type monster in the graveyard and banish it. And when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon as many monsters as possible that were banished by this effect. So this is another way to just kind of swarm the field with random psychic monsters in your graveyard. You can target any dead boss monster that you don't want to immediately recycle. You can target Lambda. You can target drivers. Just a really good card. The way you make this is Psychic Field Zone plus either Zeta and a level 2 or Omega and a level 8 and a level 1 tuner. But again, you only really need the one. It's also just a really good beat stick. 3300 attack is nothing to sneeze at right now. 1 Psychic Life Transfer. The reason you play some of these generic Psychic monsters is because the field spell does say you can only synchro summon Psychic type monsters with it. This card is life gain. Since you are going to be having an empty board, it is not uncommon to take a decent life point hit early on or in the mid game, so this card can be some good recovery. Banishing a Psychic type monster for 1200 life points is pretty good. And, just another level 7. 1 Thought Ruler Archfiend. This is the last Psychic type we play, and it's another level 8. This is also a life gain. When it destroys a monster by battle, you gain life points equal to the monster it destroyed's attack. And then you can pay 1,000 life points to negate a spell or trap that targets a Psychic type monster and destroy it. Targeting spell trap removal does still exist, but it's not as common, but this card is still just really great. For the non-psychics, we play Yazi because it can't be targeted. Black Rose because it destroys the field if we're in a really losing position. Black Rose Moonlight, this is here to counter specific decks. Black Rose Moonlight can return level 5 or higher special summon monsters to the hand. This is really good in the current meta thanks to both the popularity of Shaddoll's and Dinos. So if they summon Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, you can just spin that. Or if you summon Moonlight, you can spin their Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. And same with like most, if not all of the Shaddoll fusions, you can just spin. It's super useful. Unfortunately, it lets you target any special summon monster when a level 5 or higher monster is special summoned to your opponent's side of the field. So it can work on monsters that don't have a level. So this can hit Boral Load, this can hit Boral Sword. It can kill the thing they make with IP. It's just a really good card, but it is mainly here for those decks that do have a lot of higher level summons, since it activates every time they summon and on its own summon once. We play 1 Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. This turn can blow up a bunch of effect monsters and deal effect damage. It's just another way to clear some weaker boards. Not very many monsters can get above 3000 attack in the game right now, outside of the damage step, of course. Like Boral Sword doesn't grow until then. So it's a good way to do some pretty decent removal. 1 Angel of Zara. Angel of Zara gains 100 attack for each of your opponent's banished card. But the real reason we play this is anytime it is banished, it returns during your next standby phase. The standby phase is the next turn. So if it's banished during your opponent's turn, you get it during your standby phase. And if it's banished during your turn, you get it during your opponent's standby phase. So this is just a good, infinite recursion card. If you have macro or defissure, anytime it's destroyed by card effect, you'll get it back. Just a wonderful, wonderful card. 1 Stardust Spark Dragon. I'll admit, Stardust Spark Dragon is personal choice and potentially not the best choice. It does prevent something from being destroyed by a card effect. You can target any face-up card, so you can protect Field Spell, you can protect Overload, you can protect a Floodgate. It is a quick effect, so you can make them waste a Twin Twister or a Lightning Storm. It might not be the best choice, but we don't have a Borreload Savage Dragon, which is a decent alternative. And you can choose another level 8 if you prefer, but I really like Spark Dragon for the little bit of protection for your Floodgates. And then our 15th card is Gravity Controller. In addition to being a Psychic type, a lot of these extra deck monsters during MR4 can get their primary effect off or buy us some time and then turn into Gravity Controller to out an extra deck card. Gravity Controller combos really well with Life Transfer because you can summon Life Transfer off of the field spell and then banish a card from your graveyard, turn it into Gravity Controller, and then spin an extra deck monster of theirs. And with as much good link and good boss monsters that are prevented from card destruction, the spin effect of Gravity Controller is pretty good. And so that is all for this Psy-Frame deck. Psy-Frames are one of the few synchro decks that can still play through MR4, thanks to the fact that when your synchros banish themselves, they go back to a main monster zone. But of course, with as many synchros that are in this deck, Master Rule 5 will help this deck be better than ever. Well, not better than ever. Omega still at 1. But I think this is a really good deck, a really fun deck for this format, and hopefully someone can have some fun with it. That's been P-Star the Better Man, and I'm out.